Alright, welcome back to another video. Today, we're doing some fun stuff. If you follow me on IG or here, you've probably noticed that I've been shooting quite a bit of film recently. If you don't know, and if this is your first video here, I've been shooting quite a bit of film recently. So much so that there's no feasible way that I would be able to send it off to get developed and scanned on the budget that I'm on right now. We have been developing, I think if we average it out, we're shooting about 3 to 5 rolls within about a week, give or take, which is a lot of film, a lot of shots, a lot of scanning, a lot of developing. The way we've kind of handled that is we have to figure out how we're going to develop in-house and scan in-house and take care of all that fun stuff in the most efficient way, but not just the most efficient way, but the easiest possible way. There are several ways you can develop, one being this handy dandy Patterson tank here, which seems to be the most popular if you do a quick search on home developing. The other is kind of relatively new and not quite as popular just yet, but that's this lab box here by Ars-Imago. It kind of just came out. It was on Kickstarter for the longest time. We got ours quite a bit ago, I think 2-ish, maybe we're going on 3 months now, but I've been using this heavily for 35 and 120. This is a daylight developing box. What you do is you load in your canister and then you roll it up all in daylight. You don't have to worry about a dark room or a dark bag like you do with the Patterson tank. What we're gonna do today is we're going to develop a roll of 35 mil using a few different things. It's not gonna be the bare bones basic developing. This is gonna be the most efficient, easiest, somewhat quickest setup we have. I will do a separate video on bare bones. That will be coming in a future video, but for right now, color film, lab box, fancy tools, just to make it easy and most accurate. So let's get going. As far as chemicals go, I am using the CineStill Film Processing Color Negative Chemistry. That's the CS41 liquid mix. It's like the powder mix, but it all comes in a liquid form, which makes it fairly easy if you're gonna go ahead and make the whole thing at once. I'm also using the CineStill TCS-1000. That's kind of what's gonna regulate the temperature and help me get my chemicals up and maintain at 102 degrees. Kind of important that both those maintain at least 102 or a smidge higher to account for temperature loss. That's what the TCS-1000 kind of helps me do. It heats up the water and mixes it up, make sure it's all to temp. Works really well. I've been using it for about a month or so, and it's done an excellent job at maintaining temperature and helping my chemicals get to temp. Since it does take a bit of time for the water to heat up, I kind of help it get to temp a little bit quicker by boiling some water in one of those electric kettles. It really cuts down the time from, let's just say, roughly 20-ish minutes to get to temp to about 5 minutes at the most. It helps me get my chemicals done super quick so I don't have to wait around and really kind of burn energy, because, I mean, this whole process to begin with isn't the most eco-friendly, but try to use the least amount of water and the least amount of energy to get these done. So I'm not really going to go into the overall detail on assembling the lab box. If you get one or you want to get one, there are plenty of manuals and videos on assembly. This is kind of my overall process on color negative film developing. Loading up the lab box is quite easy. All you have to do is kind of feed the film under this little bar here. That little bar is there because there are small teeth that come up from the bottom of the box to trim off the end of the film once you're done rolling it in. You don't really have to worry about doing that in the dark or anything like that, because the box kind of does it all for you. When I say does it for you, I mean you have to still manually do it, but you don't have to be in a dark room. You don't have to do any of that nonsense, if you will. So every once in a while I tend to check the temperatures of the developing chemicals to make sure that they're at least 102. If they're a little bit higher, that's okay. 103, 104 is typically okay. You don't really want to go any higher because you could run the risk of screwing up your film. Aside from checking on my chemicals to make sure they're both at 102 degrees, I also warm up some water to about 102, give or take a degree or so, and I do a pre-soak, not for any other reason other than to make sure that the box and the film itself are as close to 102 as I can get it without having the chemicals in there already. What that does is it reduces the amount of heat that you're going to lose as you process. With color film, it's pretty important to keep your chemicals at temp. If you drop below 102, if you go above 102, you have a little bit of leeway. For optimal results and for repetition, it's good to keep them as close to developing temp as you can. Once we have the pre-soak all taken care of, it is on to actually developing our film. First chemical we're going to use is the C41 Developer itself. The C41 chemical itself is going to run for about 3.5 minutes. Now the lab box has two different methods you can do this. It recommends either a half fill with more or less constant agitation, or a full fill. That's where the entire roll of film is submerged in the developer itself. I've been going with the full fill method because when I was doing the half fill, I would get these lines on some of my frames, and what I think was happening was I think the film itself was starting to develop before I got a chance to agitate slash rotate the crank slash spin the film in the chemical itself. So since then, I've been doing the full fill with constant agitation. I've been happy with the results. I haven't had any issues whatsoever. Seems to be working for me, so you may want to try it out yourself if you are doing this at home. Once we are done with the developing portion, it is on to our next chemical. That is Blix. It's a bleach slash fix all-in-one chemical. Depending on your chemicals that you have, this may be two separate ones, but for this specific kit, it's just one. This one's gonna go for about 8 minutes, and it's the same overall method: full fill, constant agitation. You don't really have to do constant agitation, but that's just something I've been doing, and I've been happy with the results. Once we hit that 8-minute mark, we are good to go. We can pour out our chemicals, and at this point, our film is light safe. It's already developed. Not quite ready to go, but it is okay to remove the lid, disassemble kind of everything else of the lab box. That way you only have the roll and the crank and that front portion of the lab box. For rinsing, this specific mix that I have recommends 6 full rinses. What I like to do personally is fill up the lab box just above where the film is, let it soak, then agitate it for a few, like 30-ish seconds. I will do that 6 times or until the water itself is rinsing clear. Once we are all done with our 6 rinses, slash if the water itself is rinsing clean, it is on to one final step. This step is not required, but if you're developing at home and you have hard water or water that just has a bunch more minerals in it than normal, you're going to either want to get some distilled water, or you can use the final rinse that came with the CS41 film processing kit. They both work really well. I like both of them, but distilled water is much cheaper, and if you're doing a lot of these, that's always good. What I like to do with both is basically the same thing. I will fill up the box a little bit past the film roll, let it soak for just a quick second, then I will agitate it for about 30 seconds to a minute. Then I will pour it out and we'll be ready to go. And that's it. All you have to do is unroll the film, either squeegee it off or don't. I've been squeegeeing off my film. I've been getting really good results. I haven't been getting any water spots or any kind of blotching or anything like that, and it does help the film dry off quite a ways quicker. And other than that, you just let it hang dry in a safe area away from dust. We have another bathroom that we use that no one goes into, and by no one I mean none of our animals, and they kind of hang there. We give them about 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours sometimes to dry off before we go to scanning. So overall, from start to finish, from the time it takes me to get everything out, assembled, film developed, everything disassembled, and everything ready to dry, is about 30 to 45 minutes. It's not super quick. Film is not super quick at all. Shocker. But it is relatively easy. Plus, I don't have to worry about fumbling around with film and scissors in a dark room or a dark bag. That is the huge benefit of going with something like the lab box. If you're doing several rolls at a time, that could be a problem. Realistically, you can probably do 1 or 2 in a day. It does take this a little bit of time to dry. There's a lot of parts, there's a lot of different moving items in here that could cause some problems if you're trying to rush through quite a bit. If that's the case, I would highly recommend a Patterson tank. One of these you can do, well, with this specific one, you can do 2 35s. They also come in 4, 5, 6, I believe 7 and 8 if you're, you know, processing lab amounts. But for me, 1 roll at a time, perfect. 2 rolls at a time, perfect. With that being said, the TCS-1000 and the Lab Box is definitely not the most affordable point of entry in developing your own film at home. For that, you would want to go with a Patterson tank, and for black and white specifically, the DF96 Mono Bath by CineStill also. It's a wonderful chemical, relatively inexpensive. You can start developing your own black and white film for less than $100 really. That's a separate video that we'll go over pretty soon here. So I know this wasn't the most detailed video, but I tried to go over a little bit without going into a heavy amount of numbers and technical specs. Just kind of the overall process to kind of show you how relatively easy it is to develop your own film at home. If you like this video, if you want to see more film videos, let me know, because I have a lot of film that I have in the queue. I have a lot of different processing steps that I also have in the queue. Plus, we also have the cheapest way to get started developing your own film with the Patterson tank and the Mono Bath video coming out relatively soon. Not tomorrow, not the next day or anything like that, but within the next week or two, for sure, I'm gonna have that for you. Let me know what you thought of this video. If there's anything that you have questions on as far as chemicals, as far as parts, as far as film, let me know in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, I gotta go. We gotta put this stuff up. We got a lot of stuff all over the place. I gotta do some scans. Like, share, subscribe, help this channel get a little bit bigger in incremental steps. Yeah, okay, bye.